Okay, so Monza, Charles Leclerc win. What's your verdict, CJ?
Well, I called it off camera,
You
obviously, to
did,
you.
yeah. Yeah, you
I
did.
did. Got it right. Yeah, I mean, if anything, I guess Ferrari is still in the constructors' fight. I mean, no one
Very
was
true.
talking about that before.
Yep.
McLaren had a mare, didn't they? That was just a mare.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's my takeaways. Not great.
Speaking on McLaren's mare, then, the fact that Lando Norris got a better start this week, but seemed like it was all for nothing in the end because after the first turn he was ahead, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get up to turn 4, and then all of a sudden his Australian teammate is alongside him, waving. Waving goodbye as Lando's nearly catching the car, and Leclerc is capitalising on that, getting himself ahead of Lando, and off Oscar goes into the distance. What do you think on that somewhat controversial, in my opinion, overtake?
How is that allowed to happen? Surely, if we're going to be honest, it's not brutal. It's just fair. Who's the driver that's got the chance to win the championship according to everybody else? I don't think it's possible. I mean, hey ho. But who's the one that's got the chance according to the maths, according to the logic, the pace? It's Norris. And if you're ahead coming out of turn 1, lap 1, he did what he needed to do. He got over that big hurdle. He's ahead out of turn 1.
Yeah.
He still finished third after lap 1. So how on earth did that not go in? Did you not think coming out of turn 1, if Norris is ahead, you hold position? There was no threat from the car behind at that point. Russell had already taken the escape road. They were clear. And in the end, it made it so they lost the race. Leclerc getting ahead of Norris at that moment made it so they lost the race. That was the moment in that race. They lost it all. And if they're in the fight for the constructors, and that's the argument being made, that's the one we want most, though you still lost it there, and you lost chance to get a 1-2.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it?
At that point, exactly.
And the fact that in the driver's pen after the race, there were a few interviews that came out. Lando says that Oscar, he feels, crossed the line a little bit over the limit, should I say. He didn't really say cross the line, but in his words, over the limit, in a sense. Whereas Oscar feels like it was his only opportunity to win the race. Should Oscar be even thinking about winning that race, though? Not really, right?
As a driver, I mean, it'd be wrong for me to turn around as some guy in a chair going, yeah, you shouldn't be thinking about it at all. Obviously, he should be thinking from a selfish point of view. But if you've been told a million times it's the team game, and we've been told after Hungary that Norris gave you that position back, everything was played by the book, well, surely today the book wasn't played properly. That's the kind of move that you make when you're fighting a championship against a driver from another team. Think back to 2018, Vettel Hamilton. It's not the kind of move you make in an inter-team battle when one driver has a serious chance to win and the other one is slightly further away. Again, Piastri did a great job in terms of his race today, but overall, the race was lost for McLaren at that point there. That's after everything else, that was the knock-on effect. So they need to think about what they're going to do going into Baku.
And just to speak on what they should do going into Baku, will echo what everyone else is probably saying at this stage and was saying in Hungary. I mean, McLaren said to Lando, you're going to need Oscar in the future if you want to win this championship. That was one of the phrases that they used to convince him to give the position back.
Yeah.
And when he needed Oscar wasn't there. He was bye-bye.
It's not a beat on Oscar. Oscar's been great at times. He's settled down, and especially think back to last season. I mean, he did what was asked of him.
Yeah, definitely earned his stripes.
But this papaya rules thing now, it's like one of your drivers has got a chance of winning a championship. Like Red Bull had their worst performance that they're probably going to have all season.
Yeah,
and it's all about perception. Norris still got 8 points out of this race.
Yeah.
And it's still enough of what everyone needs. Everyone was saying, okay, if it's a 1-2, he needs to win every race and all this. But he's still got 8 points out of it. He needs an average of, what is it? I saw on Twitter, 7.8 or something.
Yeah. 7.819.
He still got, he got the average. He did his job. But there was a bigger opportunity on the cards today. And in reality, if he loses the championship by 10 points, then you know where he lost it.
Average
They
isn't
need
going to
to
cut it though
think.
over the course of a season, is it? Average is not going to
No.
like when average, if that's the maximum available, will. But average when there's more available is not going to cut it because, like you said, this is going to be probably one of Red Bull's weaker results. I mean, Singapore is coming up, and they weren't as strong Singapore last year, so maybe that will reflect again this year. Although it is seemingly a different car this year, and we don't quite know the characteristics, whether or not it's worse or better in some areas. You know, maybe they've improved it in Singapore and made it worse in the rest of the entire season. But
yeah, we have no idea.
we've
I mean,
no
I don't
idea.
think even Red Bull know where they are at the minute, do they?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
And they've not got Adrian Newey with his pen and paper to tell them either.
Yeah.
Let's so move on to Ferrari then. Charles Leclerc wins. Magical is one word some people would use. King of Monza is a title, a moniker that they gave him. He's the last time that Ferrari won was 2019. It was Leclerc. Just give me your thoughts on his win. How you feel like? Do you feel like he looks into it, or do you feel like it was very much a masterclass?
It's definitely somewhere between the two. That's the honest answer. They did look into it. They made their own look. That's the big phrase everyone likes to go for. Did a great job. Leclerc did an amazing job. Sainz did very well to keep Piastri behind for that in that middle sector. Lost him some time coming forward. Did a great job in that respect. Same thing when he came to Norris. He also slowed Norris down a little bit. He did a great job. Leclerc, brilliant. I'm not going to say he's a tyre whisperer. Tyre whisperer is just,
it's thrown around too much lately, especially when people make a tyre go for a stint that maybe it probably should have done. I mean, hats off to Leclerc, like you say. It was an incredible win, and nobody's going to take that away from him. To win in a Ferrari, especially at Monza, especially with the season that they've had so far. They've won Australia and Monaco. Now those tracks are very different to Monza, so to be able to pull off a win there, you've got to have a bit of skill about you to do that. But yeah, tyre whisperer, I wouldn't throw that word around too much, just because almost nobody else did the one stop, and those that did also got to the end as well. It was very much like Belgium, where one team tried to pull off a one stop and pulled off a one stop. Didn't really get away with it because the team was ultimately disqualified. But yeah. Carlos Sainz, he drove a strong race. Started fifth, finished fourth, so improved on his position. Did just enough, really, in terms of defense. I don't think he really did any more. How do you feel like he fared in his race? Any standout moments for you in terms of Carlos Sainz?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, unless I'm missing something. I mean, he did his job, and his job at that point in the race, 10 seconds behind his teammate, is okay. Well, I'm not going to get to the end on the podium from this position. Slow the McLarens down. I think he did a decent job of doing that. I think if you look in that middle sector, I think did Piastri lose 1.5 seconds to Norris at that point in that lap, just that middle sector alone. He did get caught sleeping a little bit into Ascari. He get overtaken. Yeah. He got overtaken a bit too easy, but he'd already done enough at that point. Whereas if he kept him behind for a little bit longer, it wouldn't have really made much of a difference. It was I think he did all right. Did a good job.
I feel like he did well to point out that the others were definitely not going to the end, and I feel like maybe that's games that, like, if we're thinking maybe tinfoil hat level, maybe it's gamesmanship from Ferrari. Leclerc saying, "Why would you undercut, or why would you box me if we're already undercut?" And Sainz saying, "There's no way these guys are going to the end."
Yeah,
alluding to all the other teams to maybe think about the two stop, but I think it was good that he pointed out. I don't think there was anything to it though.
No.
Max Verstappen lost 8 points, as we suggested, to Lando, as Lando picked up the fastest lap of the race at the very end. That car just seems like it is nowhere in no man's land at the moment. Perez started 8th, finished 8th, but behind Russell, who boxed for a new front wing.
Yeah. where to start with Red Bull. It's a mystery, isn't it? Again, Verstappen will go away from Monza fairly happy. He lost 8 points, and in the reality of it, after the way the weekend would have started and he went into that race, you would have been thinking he's losing more than that. He lost 8 points. It's not great, and he wouldn't have enjoyed driving the car. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's challenging for the podium and the race with the victories as we the past few years have become so accustomed to. But overall, if you were to look at it and look at it smartly, he's lost only 8 points, and he would have been probably should have been far more. Perez, for a large portion of the race, I thought he was doing a good job. And
he was.
Somehow, Russell,
as if by magic. Yeah.
So I very much lost as to how that's occurred. But yeah, hey ho. He didn't do as bad comparatively to Verstappen, but is that just because Verstappen couldn't get the most out of the car this weekend? Did Perez take a step forward? Still finished 8th, so not really. Yeah, it's an odd one.
For me, with Perez, it's just like we said last week, he's just about doing enough. But when that car, like, he finished 8th, he started 8th, which you can't really ask for more. But when you take certain circumstances and put them all together, you really should be asking for more. Like you said last week, who would you put in that car, though? Can't really put anyone else in that car and then expect them to bring home results straight away. As we also said, that Constructors' Championship is now basically, if things continue, is over. Red Bull, and maybe even they get overtaken by Ferrari. I think. Let me just check that. I think Ferrari is somewhat 30 somewhat points. Yeah, so 30 points behind, 39 points behind them. So it's basically over for Red Bull going into like the remaining 8 races this season.
I think it might be 8. I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, but. And Verstappen couldn't really do anything during the race. There was nothing to be done. However, Perez really needs to be there in this fight, and he's not. He's still not showing up. And you can also argue that when he did have the fight in the car to be at the front, he also wasn't there. He was still, a lot of the time, the last of the 4 big teams in the results.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think the best way to look at it is that McLaren have got like a 12-race podium streak where one of their drivers has been on the podium for the past 12.
Yeah.
Now, if you had a situation where you were to take Verstappen out of that for any sort of reason, it would have been done after like 4 or 5. Whereas both McLaren drivers are capable of scoring the podium in a minute. Yeah. And for this season, after the Red Bull started to deteriorate in pace comparatively to the rest, Perez has not been anywhere. He just hasn't. And it's not good enough at the minute to be able to even possibly at this point get 3rd. I mean, it's a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's big margins between the 2 drivers every season, like in terms of points. Perez is Perez 143 points compared to Verstappen's 300. Moving on to Verstappen, though. I know we spoke a bit about him, and how he couldn't really do much more, and his team didn't really help today as well. I mean, the fact that they butchered that pit stop when he really needed it. I mean, now the cracks are starting to show at Red Bull. I mean, the one thing that they could do was pit stops, and I think he had a 4 second, maybe 5 second pit stop, which is completely uncharacteristic of Red Bull. And I don't know if you saw, but there was a replay of Verstappen coming out of the pits, or on his way out of the pits, slamming into the wheel out of frustration. And it is frustration, and it's people sometimes knocking for childish behaviour. But today I feel like it showed like a much more mature head on his shoulders than people give him credit for. I'm not saying like all of a sudden this mature head has appeared. Now we kind of saw more of what goes on in the background of Red Bull, as Verstappen commented on, and people in the background, please pay attention because this is really important. And a comment like that doesn't come from nowhere. That is definitely like the Verstappen and the team in the background that you don't get to see during the race, coming out during the race. So I thought that was quite interesting to see, especially that he's really thinking about this championship fight. A lot of the time he's shrugging his shoulders. What more could he have done? But this time it seemed different. And he gave an interview not to waffle on too much, but then he gave an interview to the Dutch press though, and he was basically like, pit stop was crap, the strategy was crap, and then car was crap because I had to manage an issue. So he was also managing an issue. And before we got on this, you touched on earlier that on the medium stint, he was basically nowhere.
Yeah, it's I don't know what's going on. I don't understand Belgium, he was on pole by like a considerable margin before the penalty. I'm at a loss. I don't know what's happened. Maybe it is the brakes. Maybe that was the thing for them. But it's like that car is nowhere. It's like they've got a fix for it either. No one's talking, from what I've seen, about upgrades, about we've got an idea, about we can fix this. Or it seems like there is genuinely no hope into trying to fix their issues, and the only hope that they have is trying to go to a track where it sort of suits their car more to even possibly challenge for the podium at this point. If we even go back to last week, the Red Bull was getting caught, Verstappen was getting caught by Leclerc at the end of that stint in Zandvoort. Yeah. I mean, that really should have been an alarm bell going off. I don't think they know what's wrong with their car. To have dropped off this dramatically over a period of, it's not even 12, it's like 6 months. Maybe they've come to the end of their cycle in terms of development of their car. Maybe there is no further they can go. I doubt it. There's obviously something that they've gone wrong with, and at some point they've got to try and get it back on track. Now, there could only be one upgrade from getting back to being competitive for podiums and constantly. I mean, he's only literally one race, and I know I'm jumping the gun, but that was bad today. And we're going into Baku next week, or not next week, 2 weeks' time. You know what I mean? It's going to be a very similar style track, and then Singapore will come into tracks which aren't going to be great for what the issues in their car seem to be.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, they need to get something going now, because otherwise it's going to be. I mean, as we've seen, even if Norris doesn't win the race, he's still going to be taking chunks out of Verstappen.
Yeah, they were the fourth fastest team today. They literally finished 6th and 8th, and I feel like the 6th was a symptom of Russell's errors. And Verstappen's obviously putting in a great performance. But it just seems like it's red alert at the moment. Mayday, mayday. Everyone's jumping ship, and everyone else is scrambling for bits of paper with how to improve the car on from Adrian Newey's secret locker. There's nothing that's going well for them at the moment, and it just seems, what did they do from here? And to touch on your point as well about the cycle, the development cycle, and how Red Bull have, because they're finishing first in the championship and they got that early penalty. I don't know how far that early penalty from the 2021 season plays at this point. Maybe we need to stop talking about that, because at this point maybe the effects of it have been felt and now they're being mitigated naturally. However, it's still a point to say that they've had a lot less development time than the rest of the teams, and naturally have a lot less development time anyway. So every mistake they make on an upgrade must be dramatic. It must be felt throughout. Like they won't have many upgrades to make. They've got to make them sparingly, and when they do make them, they've got to count. And whatever they've done to this car, it's not counted this time around. And whatever they're waiting for, it needs to do that tenfold. Otherwise, they will win. They will lose the constructors. That's already happening. Last week we were kind of laughing a little bit because we thought Lando Norris has won, but Verstappen, there's no way that Verstappen is going to lose this championship. But now, albeit that Norris did not deliver today on what he should have done, did deliver what was required, but not what was possible. But now it is a very, very real threat. So let's move on to Mercedes then. Mercedes, George Russell started third, finished seventh. Because, well, he had to get a front wing change after Piastri got off the line better than Norris, started to catch Norris, probably was going to try and pass Norris on the outside. That attempt wasn't successful. I think Martin Brundle pointed out on the switchback that's what Piastri was trying to do. and which led him to brake earlier than expected for Russell, which then resulted in Russell nearly going into the back of him and then having to drive around and then off the runoff area. How do you think Russell has been as of late? In my opinion, he's been qualifying well and he's doing incredibly well compared to his teammate in terms of qualifying. I think that he's now 11-4 or something like that. It's quite ridiculous. But his races aren't reflecting that. Or is that not true?
I think it's true, but there are reasons. I think the standings thing. I think if he'd got the points for the Belgian win, and he'd managed to, he'd have got that, he'd still be ahead of Hamilton in the championship. And it's true as of late, Hamilton's got better, but I don't think I don't think that Russell's taken a step back or he's come off the gas. It's just a case of he's had some lucky results. You say a million times, you make your own luck. Sometimes you're unlucky by your own fault too.
Yeah,
he's not been horrific, but today was his fault. He made the mistake. Admittedly, a lot of drivers would have made the same mistake if Piastri was braking that early. It wasn't like it was god awful. He still got back ahead of Perez, but there was more on the table from where he started. I mean, you can look at that pretty much from where Leclerc finished from fourth. So,
Hamilton commented that he didn't feel like the car was any further forward than where he finished it today. So, lending credence to that, do we actually think that Russell would have finished where he started, or do you think
probably
you think he would have finished third on the
but more
podium?
than likely, he wouldn't have. He would have either finished on the podium or he would have finished fourth. There wasn't much in it. Would he have finished ahead of Carlos Sainz? Maybe. Depends what Russell would have done with his strategy. We don't know. You'd probably guess that if he did it at Spa, he'd probably try and do it again here if he hadn't not got to do a wing change or anything like that. So,
interesting result would have come out of that. Would it have been Charles Leclerc on the top step still? Probably.
More than likely.
Hamilton started sixth. Sorry, finished fifth. Like I said, they both got the most they could out of the car given the situations that they were in today. Like, obviously, Russell put himself further back, which is its own situation. He could have got third, as you say, but the car was quite clearly faster than the Red Bull, but not as fast as McLaren or Ferrari. It was just there. There's not really much more to say. Hamilton seems to be struggling with. It's quite funny that I think Jacques Villeneuve last week made a comment on Hamilton being an emotional driver that drives on emotion, and a lot of people, especially Hamilton fans, clapped back and said, "No, he's not. That's ridiculous." Especially, and then when anyone comments on Lewis Hamilton, they always bring it. So if everyone brings up a negative comment about Lewis Hamilton, for some reason Max Verstappen just catches a stray, and he basically was like, "Oh yeah," compared to Verstappen, who yells at his race engineer week in and week out. And I mean, one, there's no need for that, and two, lately it's kind of been proven right in a respect. Like, I don't want to be like Jacques Villeneuve is the be all end all of sports commentary, because he's definitely not. But as of late, Hamilton has been struggling with the mental side of Formula One, and that's been clear. Do you think it will be long? Do you think the change for Ferrari is good for him because that's a reset that he probably needs at this point? Do you think he'll hit the ground running in Ferrari, though? Is my question.
No.
that was a very definitive no. You were saying that now before you even opened your mouth.
It's not even a case of like he's not up to it anymore. It's not. I don't even think that. I just think that to hit the ground running against Leclerc, like one of the best qualifiers in F1, probably in my opinion, the fastest guy over one lap. He's going to start off with the same problems as he has this year in the Merc.
Yeah.
In the same situation where he's getting out qualified by his teammates. He's going to have to accept the fact that more than likely he's not going to out qualify Leclerc for most races. Over the race stint, he might still be competitive. He might still be able to challenge Leclerc. If the car next year, if the Ferrari, because we're going into 2025 and no one knows who's going to be the fastest car.
Yeah.
Like last year, coming into this season, we've always known really who's going to be the fastest car. From right now, admittedly, it might change before the end of the year. We have no idea. It could be the Merc. It could be the Ferrari. It could be the Red Bull could come back. The McLaren could be up there. Aston Martin might find something like they did for 23, and they might be challenging again. No one knows. So if Ferrari come out the gates with a competitive car, he can challenge.
Yeah.
It'll all depend on circumstances. He's not going to out qualify Leclerc, and that's going to be a hard pill to swallow. Like it just is.
Yeah.
And I think
especially if he's struggling against George Russell. Like I'm not a knock against George Russell. George Russell is a F2 champion and is definitely proven his mettle in terms of Formula One. I mean, I can't get on board with him personally. I've said that before. As a Mercedes fan, I could just not get on board with George Russell. However, the pace is definitely there and always has been. I mean, from his first time in a Mercedes car, he looked to be beating Valtteri Bottas, who did only win 10 races in one of the most dominant cars of all time, if not the most dominant car of all time. But still, for George Russell to do that on his first race he's proven, it's impressive. So, but I think Hamilton will struggle a lot more with Leclerc, as you say. Leclerc is just over one lap, especially. And I think, even though we say he's a great qualifier, that doesn't mean he's not a bad racer as well. Just because we're saying he's a good qualifier, and that's the only thing people say about him. He's also very good in the race. Like he beat Sebastian Vettel time and time again, to the point where Vettel was got into the emotional headspace of Formula One as well.
Yeah. So do you think that going in then? Obviously, let's be honest, you're a Hamilton fan. Hamilton's your main driver. Yeah. That's your guy.
I will be casually changing hats when Hamilton goes to Ferrari. I'll make no bones about it. I'll definitely be rooting for Ferrari. I think I say that now as a Mercedes fan. I will not be able to not have one foot on either side of the fence for both sides. It's impossible. Like I can't do that. I will not be all of a sudden turned off and not rooting for everything Mercedes. But if Hamilton is winning in a Ferrari,
do you think that's possible against Leclerc? Do you think that's
possible?
Do I
think that's possible?
Year? Especially bearing in mind if that car comes out the gates in this scenario as the main threat, which it could do. Like they're building a decent team now. There's obviously they're making some sort of inroads. It's not like an awful. They're in the top 3 teams that are challenging.
Yeah.
Do you think coming out the gates that Hamilton in a competitive car that can compete the championship?
At the start of the season, definitely not. There's no way. There's no way at the start of the season that Hamilton competes with Leclerc. However, the only piece missing so far from Charles Leclerc, we say he's a great racer, we say he's a great qualifier, and I don't know if he's turned it around yet. There's not been an instance, with Formula One, because of recency bias, there's never been an instance where this has been proven. Charles Leclerc hasn't been able to mold the team to Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz has had moments where he has displayed that I have this team, I have my side of the garage behind me. Now, if the pit stop today that Leclerc did, obviously not knowing that it was going to the one stop to the end, the pit stop today were really Ferrari's strategy call. That is again Leclerc not having control of his team. And I feel like it may be a push to say it because it is an all-Italian team at the moment. I feel like Hamilton does have that factor, and he can get his garage behind him to the point where maybe not win the first season, but start to pick up wins like he does towards the end of the season over Leclerc, because the team will not be as behind Leclerc as they would be behind Hamilton. I feel like he just has that ability. That's, an ability of most of the greats that Leclerc has yet to show. that we've never had. You always have to have an opportunity to actually see it. It has to come to light. The only time that we ever see that is over the team radio.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's fair enough. That's fair. It's good to hear it from you. Obviously, that's my opinion. You're a Hamilton fan, so it's not a biased.
Yeah.
Someone who would be probably slightly more that way inclined. He's saying the same thing. Then I guess that keeps my head a little bit more level. I just don't see it being competitive going into.
No, I feel like Leclerc will absolutely wipe the floor with Lewis Hamilton, and if Lewis Hamilton does not keep out of the dangerous headspace that Formula One can create, where you start your results start having diminishing returns because you just think you've fallen off, which another factor is he is turning 40, and that will be something that he'll be thinking about, even if it's not true. Even if like his reaction times are just as good or good enough, and his driving is just as good enough. The first thought that most people will think at that age in Formula One is probably, maybe I'm too old for this. You start to try and find answers in other things other than, is it a lack of talent? You just do. But yeah, I think overall Hamilton definitely has the ability to get a team behind him, but not the ability to outqualify Charles Leclerc in the first few races. We can forgive the first race and be like, it's his first time in the car. But the second race, the third race, the fourth race, the fifth race, I don't think it's happening. Leclerc is just like, I've always liked Charles Leclerc. It's just for good reason. He's just, like you say, the fastest over one lap, 100%. He makes his mistakes, which kind of make you feel a bit just got so much potential, but you're just not quite there.
Yeah. Just wait until Team LH clip up that for next year. Lewis Hamilton will get completely destroyed, and then you're going to be the most hated out of context.
Yeah. Oh well. Team LH. It's never something that I've been behind. It's not. Oh well. Is all I can say to that. Oh well. You can clip that too. Yeah, so Russell, poor race execution lately, but as you say, it's mainly bad luck. And Hamilton drove a good race today, but made comments that still allude to the fact that he's kind of getting in his own head. The most dangerous thing, especially someone like Lewis Hamilton, how he portrays himself as balanced, I would say. He does portray himself as the ability to take his hits and move on very quickly and get back up, as he says. Still I rise, yeah. So he needs to, actually channel that and put his money where his mouth is, because he keeps on getting in his own head, doing the opposite of how he portrays himself. He is going to have a tough time for the rest of the season, and then when he gets to Ferrari as well, if he still carries those same attitudes, it's going to be a very quick retirement and no 8th title for him. Fortunately, it's just the way it is. Sometimes the fairy tales don't play out the way you want them to. We'll move on to Aston Martin. It would be incredible if Hamilton won in a Ferrari. Let's be honest.
It would.
As unlikely as it may be, because that team is Charles Leclerc's at the moment. No matter how much money they've paid for Hamilton, at the moment that team is Charles Leclerc's. Turn that around to him, and he's got to do that with performance, not with talking to engineers behind Leclerc's back or whatever. Yeah, it would be incredible for it to happen. Aston Martin, Alonso started 11th, finished 11th. Stroll started 17th, finished 19th.
Oh dear. Very bad for them, eh? Very bad. I mean, Kevin Magnussen got a 10-second time penalty and still finished ahead of Alonso. It's very bad.
By 2/10, Alonso did give it a good try, but that car, it's not the drivers, is it? I mean, Stroll, you could say half of it. I'd say the drivers. I know recently you've had your opinions. Actually, share your opinion on Alonso.
It's not even recent. It's been a 12-month thing now. If you think back, I first said this to you 12 months ago at Belgium when he crashed in the sprint race, and I said, and it was. If you look at all the results after that as well, there has been some good ones where it's not been a massive thing. Either the motivation has started to cede and it's started to go, or he's starting to lose some of the speed. And I'm sorry, people are going to go, you're wrong, you're shutting out.
It's Fernando Alonso. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's
double world champion, Fernando Alonso.
Exactly. Look at the evidence, though. That's the thing. If you go back from when that car started to fall away, his performances and the mistakes, mainly the mistakes that he started to make, the big mistakes like Belgium, I think he made some at Mexico as well. There were some mistakes that started to come out that he hadn't been making until that point. And it's like he started to slow down mentally more than anything else. I don't think that you can't say this is Alonso from the start of 23. It's the same Alonso now. There's been some decline. It just has been. And I think if, for example, in a normal world, that Aston Martin should not be, I don't know what it was. Was it 10.2 seconds behind the Haas of Kevin Magnussen?
Yeah.
Regardless of strategy or whatever, Alonso gave it his best go and still finished 0.2 behind after a 10-second time penalty. I mean, people need to start to realise that there is actually a decline going on there, and there've been times to see. I mean, you actually look at the qualifying stat. I think he's like 6th down in the list or 5th down in the list. It's definitely in the mid pack of like the head-to-head stats in qualifying, even against Lance Stroll. And you'd say that he's probably one of the ones you'd expect to have a more dominant overlook over that.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see the beginning of the inevitable end. And it's not like I'm going, he needs to get out. He needs to get out of the sport. And he's still doing a great job.
He's still finishing ahead of his teammate.
And it still isn't the same. It just isn't the same driver, though. That's the thing.
No.
And I think if he had a podium-capable car, it might be different. But maybe it's just the motivation that's gone, because there is a problem.
Yeah, this is what I said recently, isn't it? It's the fact that the podium-capable car, as you suggest, may be enough to keep him competitive. Maybe that is it. Maybe to kind of pull away from the slowing down mentally side of it and lend into... Is it because, very much like when we see, not to harp on Hamilton too much, very much like when we see Hamilton in a more competitive car, the results just seem to come his way?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I get it. I just think, for me,
is that a man now, though, that has switched teams time and time again, seen maybe a little bit of promise here or there, but then the team has fallen off? And you're now 43 years old, 20 years into your career as a racing driver, more than 20 years as a racing driver. I think it's nearly 20 years in Formula One, if not more. I can't remember what age you started.
It's more. It's
20.
I think it might be 20th season now, I think.
Okay. But yeah. And the results just still aren't coming your way. The team is still not coming. That one car that you need win the championship that you got early on in your career is no longer coming your way. Does that not niggle at the motivation a little bit? Look, Fernando Alonso has always been a motivated driver, and when he came back into the sport, I said I think he is the best all round driver of all time. Like, as in his ability to just switch from car to car to car in different categories and just do well. There was no doubt in my mind that it was possible that Fernando Alonso, even though he didn't, Fernando Alonso could win the Triple Crown.
Mm-hmm. And I get it. I do get it.
And at this point, though, is it not just... I don't really have the motivation to compete for 1 point. I have the motivation to compete for wins. When the wins start to turn up, maybe I'll turn up. I can't see that attitude from Fernando Alonso, but maybe at this point that is a possibility.
I mean, people say this. They don't see this attitude from Alonso. I see it completely differently. At the end of that McLaren stint, he had given up. The 2014 Ferrari,
GP2 engine.
He'd given up. He still fought the cars to try and get into different places, sure, but he was fighting for like maybe 5th or 6th. Now it's 10th. I think at the age that he's at, if he's going to be... Obviously, it's going to be very hard to be motivated after you're 2-time world champion. You're hunting down for this race win after 10 years, 11 years.
And the 2012 season as well.
Yeah.
That's got some of it.
it's got to hurt, but surely that would motivate you if you think that 26 is your big chance, and you wouldn't
For
want to
10
start
more years.
easing off. But you wouldn't want to start easing off going into 26, though, would you? If you've got a Honda Works engine going into 26, that's going to be your big chance. Surely you try and keep pushing on, you try and keep getting the results in, build the team around, and then push for that one chance at 26. If the car is really competitive and you're still at the top of your game.
But he's sitting pretty at the moment. His teammate, albeit, people knock Lance Stroll a lot, but he has delivered some good results over the course of his career, and maybe as close to a paid driver Formula One has got recently, but still is definitely at times maybe not. You could you can knock Lance Stroll, but other times you can be like, okay, that's impressive. When he put it on pole in Brazil, was it Brazil when he put it on pole? Or Turkey put it on pole. In the wet, and these aren't just drives that come out of nowhere. Or he looked out. My only thinking behind it is he's sitting pretty with Lance Stroll as his teammate because he's Fernando Alonso, and maybe Fernando Alonso thinks I can sit back for these 2 years before I get a competitive. Why do I need to put results in? Because I don't. As I said, he's in my opinion one of the greatest all-round drivers of all time, if not the greatest. When we were talking about it when he joined back into the sport, does he not think to himself like, I'm Fernando Alonso after 21 years in motorsport? I'm Fernando Alonso. When the car comes to me, I'll be able to jump right back into the saddle. I don't need to be training now to get 10th place off Kevin Magnussen.
It's just the mistakes, though. There have been a lot of mistakes, and I can agree with you to a point with all those things. They're fine, but then if the mistakes start happening, that's when you start to go Like when Schumacher came back from Mercedes, it wasn't necessarily the fact he was off Rosberg; it was the mistakes that you saw that were glaring, and there have been some glaring mistakes. But my opinion's fairly set on that. I do agree with your points. There probably is a pace there, but even at that point, if the pace is still there, the mistakes are now creeping in. And they're harder, so you can't iron them out as you age. They're just, as soon as they're there, and you aren't getting away from that. So, I think there's definitely been a decline. I don't think it's necessarily fixable. Whatever fixable might be, I don't think it'll be good enough to win a championship anymore.
So you think if that Aston Martin in 26, if Alonso will still be in the Aston in 26?
Yeah.
So, if that Aston Martin, by some miracle, is a competitive car in 26, Lance Stroll is still sat beside him, which is very, very likely. We think that car has to be dominant for Alonso to win the championship.
More than likely. If he's in a straight shootout with I don't know, Verstappen in a Red Bull, Hamilton in Russell in a Merc, Hamilton in a Ferrari, the car's got to be better than the other car. It just has to. I think it. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but I think by the time it rolls round, it'll be proven right. He's not at the top of his game anymore. It just is the case. It doesn't detract from who he is. It detracts from the fact he's still a very good racing driver and still more than capable of being in Formula One. Absolutely. But is he up to the winning a world championship, which is the only reason he's in the sport for? No, I don't think so. I don't see it. And yeah, that's an opinion, and my opinion means nothing, but hey ho, it is what it is.
I think speaking about recency bias as well, I think what people seem to forget as well is that he's as with all these racing drivers that have stuck around for maybe longer than they should have in terms of their image. Recency bias, people will just say that they've fallen off. But a lot of the time it is the car, it is the characteristics of the changes of the sport. The regulations change a lot, and old dogs and new tricks, as they say. It's not necessarily a knock if you don't get used to a new category at the age of. It is almost a new category, these ground effect cars, compared to what he was driving in the Renault way back when he won in 2005.
Yeah, I agree. It's just the fact is that the start of the 23 season, he was getting the podiums. As soon as the car started to decline, the mistakes were coming in. And I think that just those mistakes, they can't be ironed out. They're impossible to shake. And I think as soon as they've started coming at the age that you get to, I think Martin Brundle said it about Schumacher a few years back. Once those mistakes were there, that they're not. That's when you really understand. Like, you've got to start maybe thinking about coming to an end.
Yeah.
I could be very wrong, and he could end up fast and get an upgrade for the end of the year. They could end up winning with Alonso. Hey ho.
The good thing about Formula One lately, which I hope continues into 26, but it's very unlikely, is that the field is closer, and pundits and presenters will keep on touting it over and over and over again, and it may get a little bit old. F1 is in a very good place lately, but F1 is in a very good place lately. I mean, I would take this over many of the last 10 years.
All of them.
Over
all of them.
Yeah. Because it's just so close. You don't know who's going to win it week in, week out, and it does keep you guessing. And as I said before, like, the Red Bull may be good in Singapore. Who knows? But you genuinely don't know. Like, you've no idea what's going to happen next. And I think, and it's a possibility that a driver that is 60-something points behind with 8 races to go, he's got a chance to win it still. That's you wouldn't say that of like the more dominant seasons that weren't ground effect based. It's in a very good state at the moment, and I hope it continues for a long time. And maybe this is one, the new regulations that have come in, and two, the fact that we are getting to the end of these regulations. I just hope it's not more that we're at the end of the regs than the balancing of the wind tunnel time. I very much hope that it is the balancing of the wind tunnel time that has brought these teams together. So then when the regulations do change in 26, it's not back to the status quo. And then, F1 loses millions of fans over the course of the next 2 seasons as one driver storms off into the distance and everyone touts him as the next Ayrton Senna, whoever it may be. So we covered Aston Martin, Alonso, Lance Stroll. To be honest, there's not really much to cover on Lance Stroll. I didn't find out whether or not him finishing 19th. I'm going to be honest, like him finishing 19th was either in fact, I'll be very unprofessional and quickly Google it, but I don't think it was literally just a poor race from him.
I think the fact that we don't know if it was...
Yeah, it's very telling.
If we don't know if it was an incident or he has an issue, and we're questioning if it's a possibility or not, is really kind of showing the problem.
Yeah.
It's not like Lance Stroll's been great. He's been great at times. At times is the asterisk to add in. The podium that he got with Williams, Baku, he's had some great performances, but they are very few and far between. They just are. And unfortunately, that is... At some point, it will give. There will be someone else that slots in alongside a main driver. I think that at some point they will just move into another series. I think that's more likely now or sooner rather than later, the next few years, than it was before. Maybe it's become very clear that he hasn't got the ability to challenge for a world championship alongside another driver. I mean, he didn't do great against Perez. He wasn't awful. He had good performances at times, but it wasn't amazing.
Yeah.
And he's not done very well against Alonso. He did okay against Vettel, but Vettel was on his way out.
Yeah.
As soon as Vettel decided he was on his way out, the performances were, even though sometimes Stroll finished ahead, still...
Yeah, Vettel did definitely come alive once he announced his retirement.
Yeah.
I've looked it up.
Probably time. Yeah?
Nothing happened. Nothing. He just finished 19th. So I don't know what that was about. On the debrief for Aston Martin on their page, following a tough weekend at the Italian Grand Prix, the final European race of the season, Fernando and Lance finished 11th and 19th, respectively. But yeah, he did a 3-stop. It's Charlie. He went onto the soft tire. So that is what
3-stop.
That is what caused him to end up 19th, and that's in the Sunday roundup. If something did happen, they've left it out and done Lance Stroll dirty, but by the looks of it, nothing. Yeah, as you say, I feel like it's probably time to move on to a different category or onto a different sport, as some people have suggested that he might do. I doubt he'll move to sport entirely, but definitely a different racing category for sure. It's it's great to be a Formula One driver, but you are taking a spot at this point where the team needs someone, especially going forward with Aston Martin's ambitions and money. And with the pack closing up, like years before, it'd only be the top 3 teams. But the direction that Formula One is going at the moment, you could very well say it's going to be the top 5, 6. There's
going
to be a lot less back markers, for lack of a better word, than there will be for people that actually can compete for wins. It's very much going in the direction of Formula 2 in terms of closeness. Different race winners, which is great because they're all different manufacturers and the cars are all different. And one great thing that we saw from this weekend is that all 4 cars were running entirely different rear wing concepts, but within tenths of each other. McLaren had the notches out of the sides of the rear wing, whereas Red Bull seemed to have entire cutouts of theirs, and each car looks unique, but at the same time is very close. And as I was saying before, hopefully that continues. But as for Lance Stroll, as the teams get closer and closer together, if Aston Martin want to be competing for drivers' championships, they first have to get themselves into constructors' championship conversation.
Yeah, very true.
Williams, speaking of getting themselves into the constructors' championship conversation, have sacked Morgan Sargent after the FP1 crash in Netherlands. That was his final race for the Williams team, and he's been replaced by Franco Colapinto, who has not only brought I got it right this time. Has not only brought Colapinto. I said it twice. Oh god. Anyway, Franco Colapinto. I'm leaving that in, unashamed. Replaced Sargent is in the team now and had actually a really respective race, and it's clear that the decision, although I'll get into my opinions on it, is paying off for the time being. Alex Albon started 9th, finished 9th. That team is very much now the possibly the 5th fastest team on the grid.
Yeah, very
past Alpine. There's no way that Alpine is faster. They were aiming for 4th at one point, and now they are absolutely nowhere. We'll come to Alpine later on, though. What do we think of his debut?
I think it was brilliant. I think he made that one mistake on the second Lesmo in qualifying, that he dipped his wheel in the gravel. I mean, that cost him getting into Q2. He did a very good job. Didn't bin the car, and that's the main thing. Didn't bin the car. He did a very good job. He finished behind Alonso, Magnussen, and Albon in terms of what he could have got for a first race, especially Monza, where it is very tricky in Formula One.
Yeah.
Fair play to him. Brilliant drive. Especially when, to be honest, he wasn't. I know you did your little thing where you checked it on the AI, and the AI tool told you his name might be linked with the seat.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it anywhere else from.
Yeah, I didn't hear it anywhere, which is why I didn't say it last week. I didn't hear anything to do with it. I didn't see any rumors, and then obviously I've checked the X AI.
Too much.
They do know too much, and his name was touted as being a possible replacement. So I don't know where that came from, but I'm kick myself for not bringing it up. But it wouldn't have been my insider knowledge anyway. So it wouldn't have been entirely honest. I wouldn't have been like, oh, I've heard about this F2 driver who's coming up through the ranks. Honestly, like, my F2 knowledge is very limited. I wouldn't have seen that coming. None of us did. I don't think many others that are just on the fringes of the inside of Formula One wouldn't have seen it either. But he's done well. He's for his first race, I think he finished like somewhat 10 or 12 seconds off his teammate. 14 seconds if we round up off Alex Albon, which is first race he's ever done.
Very respectable.
I think he did 8 laps of a Formula One car before this weekend. in a Formula One car. So you can't knock him really. He was very like unsung hero of the race because obviously it's his debut. We didn't really see much of him because he's down in the lower non-points paying positions. But yeah, very good race. And Alex Albon, as always, put in a solid performance for Williams, which is what they're looking for of both drivers going forward. James Vowles got some flack for the appointment of Colapinto on his comments on why he didn't put in Mick Schumacher. He said that Schumacher would have been good, but Schumacher is nothing special. Which I feel like is just, I could be wrong, and I feel like there are a lot of, especially on social media, Mick Schumacher supporters. I may get flack for this, but it's not exactly wrong, is it?
He's not wrong at all. It's not disrespectful, is it? It just is the case of like the main point with Logan Sargent is he was crashing the car and he wasn't fast. Well, unfortunately, what did we see from Schumacher?
He was crashing the car and he wasn't that fast.
It's a like for like swap, and admittedly, he could deserve, in a different era of Formula One, he could deserve a second chance. But Williams didn't need someone to come in and start doing the same thing. They needed someone that was stable, give the car to them, just enjoy what you're doing. Don't see it as a lifeline for your career, which Schumacher would have done and would have pushed himself too far. He's coming in just relishing the opportunity to be able to drive a Formula One car to the end of the season, knowing that even there's nothing that he can change, that he can't get into the F1 in the Williams next year. He's not going to be pushing himself for that goal. That's not a possibility. Signs is there. It's just a simple case of keeping it going, doing whatever he can to try and score points and try and be alongside Albon as much as possible. And he's done a good job for his first race.
It puts eyes on him as well, doesn't it? If he's in Formula One for half a season, I didn't know his name. Now I know his name. And team principal's looking for a driver. If he scores good results and adapts to the car quickly over the course of these 6 months, it can really help his career. But it may also diminish his career as well. You know, it's a 6 months chance at a stab at a seat, and then nothing after that. So it's it's a tough one because Williams are now like they have used that driver now. They've used that card. They've brought him in maybe early. Some people across social media have commented on how it's early for him to be in Formula One, maybe too early. And you know, we are only one race in. He's not been in the car, and he has scored 12th, but he's not scored points yet. So it's his first race. You know, not going to be like expecting that. Nobody expects that. But the point being, it is just a start. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is good for his career if the results continue on an upwards trend, but it's very bad for his career if they go downhill, because then no one will consider him, and he's not got a seat in 25. No,
there are no seats.
They're all taken now. Apart from one.
Yeah, the Alpha of Ricardo's one, but
and
Perez, sort of, not really. He's got a contract, but no one really knows, do they? Something's going to change there, isn't it, for next year? We don't know what's going to happen. I think Bottas as well. Bottas isn't locked in for a seat. Is Bottas locked in?
No, he's not. No, he's not locked in for a seat. He's it's very likely, unless Perez gets put into Kick Sauber, and then Bottas doesn't have a seat. But you wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't choose Perez over Bottas. I feel like when both teams, Red Bull and Mercedes, were competitive, Bottas was to Perez what Perez is to Bottas. So you wouldn't like for like choose one or the other. I don't think. I think Bottas has more race wins, albeit in a more dominant car. You wouldn't pick one up. So yeah, on to Haas. Nico Hulkenberg.
Poor guy. Poor fella.
Right off the start.
Yeah. Gets murdered by an Australian hunting for more positions.
Hunting for more positions and the drive for next season at the top team, if it is still the top team.
I don't. I mean, I want to get into the penalties because I don't. I know full well the argument is there. I mean, if Hulkenberg gets, what did Ricardo get? Ricardo got a 5-second penalty, didn't he?
Yeah, Ricardo got a 5-second penalty for pushing a driver off track or forcing a driver off track. It wasn't a collision. On paper,
sort of weaved back over him into the braking zone.
Yeah,
and sort of forced him wide. But that was more dangerous in that speed,
especially going into Ascari. That's like ridiculous.
Yeah, than the Magnussen one. And obviously, it's the letter of the law. Okay, the letter of the law dictates it. The car's not in control; it's out of control, and that's why the Magnussen one is a 10-second penalty. I cannot see from common sense how anyone looks at that and goes, "That's a 10-second time penalty." If that's a 10-second time penalty when it's a knock wheel to wheel, and 2 penalty points for Magnussen from that instant at the first chicane.
Haas do seem to get these penalties, and the I could be wrong in saying this, but this is how, like, after watching F1 for since from what I remember anyway, from the year 2000 up until now, the feeling is that Haas seems to be made an example of. Like, they do get these letter of law penalties.
Yeah.
There's sometimes where the top teams get away with things to not affect the race result, because that would be bad, especially after you could suggest that it was especially after Sebastian Vettel went off in Canada and then got that 5-second penalty, because that was a letter of the law penalty where it really shouldn't have been given. But since then, they've been maybe a bit more lenient with these top teams in terms of affecting the actual race result at the end. But Haas still gets them. Haas gets these. I think it was argued a couple of seasons. I can't remember the instance because my memory is terrible, but it was argued like, this has happened. Why have we got a penalty for it when a top team did it the week before and got nothing out of it? However, my stance on it is the letter of the law. I wish that the top team still did get the letter of the law penalties. And I know that common sense has to prevail, but at the same time, when it's Haas now, and it's, 10th and 13th place, that's where they finished, and it's for 1 point or 2 points. But you know for a fact that these letter of the law instances, if they're not addressed, what if it's for a championship at 1 point, and then this has to be brought to light. This one instance where Kevin Magnussen was not in control of the car, went into the side of Pierre Gasly and didn't get a penalty, or only got a 5-second penalty. Why am I getting a 10-second penalty now when I've basically done what Valtteri Bottas did at Hungary?
I agree, but maybe it's a case of the letter of the law, and there needs to be some sort of distinction between the two. The way I look at it is that Hulkenberg into turn 1 locks up, hits Tsunoda, makes Tsunoda have to retire from the race, gets a 10-second time penalty for doing that and for that incident alone. Magnussen goes into the chicane afterward, locks his brakes, makes wheel-to-wheel contact with Pierre Gasly. Gasly takes no damage, goes across the corner, survives perfectly fine. Magnussen also gets away unscathed. There is no damage done to either car. Now, maybe it's a case of, okay, it has to be a letter of the law penalty. That's what it says. I can sort of bend my brain around that one and go, okay, understandable. But
it's not common sense, though, is it? I want to point out that it isn't common sense before you finish your sentence. You do agree with, you can bend your mind around it, but it still isn't common sense. That's
what
it's still not common sense that Magnussen got that penalty for doing that. Like, you can get your mind around the fact that it is the letter of the law.
Yes,
but I want to make it clear that you're not saying that you agree with it.
I know I don't agree with it, but I can understand the argument being made and put forth as to why that penalty is there.
Yeah.
The point is that maybe it's a case of, well, has damage been done to either car? No. So is there a thing in there where the stewards going forward are allowed to determine, well, okay, well, no damage has been done. The cars haven't had anything done to them. It was maybe it does deserve to be penalised. It's a 5-second time penalty in my view. He has definitely forced the car off the track. But in my mind, it's nothing more than that. And maybe I'm in the wrong. But I think that seems to be the general consensus. I don't understand how
A lot
it's
does
been
seem to be
a potential
put on the
penalty.
penalties are put on the driver's actions rather than the effect on the race. I feel like it has to be a bit of both. I do agree with you there. Like, yes, the driver's actions were both the same. If you take Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen into account, they both locked a brake, had no control over the car, went into another driver. And the consequences of that, though, were entirely different for both sides. So why are the penalties not like they shouldn't be? I feel like there should be some consideration. Maybe we'd both be like, there will be people that will just want to follow the letter of the law and put all the onus on the driver's actions rather than the consequences. But at the end of the day, if we want good racing and good, fair racing results, I think some onus or some perspective has to be put on the actual results of the collisions that happen or the actions. And what and what the knock-on effects are, like, because if no driver is out of the race and both drivers continue, and maybe even like if this happens, give the place back, don't, or even hold back. I don't know how you address it in a rules of racing sense, but I don't think it has to be.
In my head, it's perfectly simple. It's a 10-second time penalty if the car takes damage. If the damage is accrued from an incident like that to the driver, which isn't at fault, then I guess it's far more straightforward. For example, Tsunoda didn't get to continue his race. He retired, what was it, lap 8 or something, lap 9? He retired fairly early on. I mean, his race was absolutely ruined by that. Whereas Pierre Gasly went straight across a curb and continued on his merry way and had the rest of
the only thing that comes from this, though, something that's come into my head now is, how do we determine what's reasonable damage to add the 5 seconds? Because if a car gets collided with, we've got a very obvious incident here. Yuki Tsunoda retires from the race, he can't continue. But if Yuki Tsunoda gets crashed into, loses a bit of floor, or something on the internals of the car is not shifted out of place, does the team then have to prove, okay, we've lost performance since this collision? It's a very slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope, but I do think there's a car that survived and there's a car which didn't DNF'd.
Yeah.
And both were rewarded with the same penalty. From that point of view, objectively, I think there needs to be some sort of alteration. Maybe, there's a happy medium that the FIA can find in that where they can address it. So, okay, well, by the letter of the law, it is what it is, but maybe we need to change the letter of the law slightly and word it better. I mean, they're more than capable of doing it. Look at the brake update they released for the brakes.
Yeah.
So they can obviously close loopholes and be able, or even open them fairly easily. There definitely are ways for them to sort it.
I just think that, like you say, maybe the FIA can get their heads around that. But then you get into the cases where if minor damage is taken and the car is still, but like, I've attempted to overtake a car, I've knocked some slight damage onto it, then 2 laps later I overtake them. Is that a consequence of me putting damage on that car? Because that car hasn't retired, that damage is not provable.
Yeah.
Then you're getting into scenarios where teams would have to be like, okay, on lap 36, we were doing 121.2s, we got hit, and then now we're doing 121.7s.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
so
you are right to an extent. I just think there is there's some medium in there where we can all agree that the outcome of both things are completely different, and they were rewarded with the same penalty. And I think you are right with what you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah. We'll see though. Like we started the conversation both agreeing with each other. Something needs to change. We just don't know what. So
exactly, that's fair.
So Haas inconsequential. Inconsequential in terms of the penalties, and in terms of the races, not in terms of penalties. Kevin Magnussen picked up 2 penalty points for his collision, and is now missing the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Yeah, unless they appeal it. If they put an appeal in?
I think they can appeal it. I'm not sure if they have appealed it yet.
I mean, this is the thing, though.
They will appeal it, surely. Surely they'll appeal it.
But would you? I mean, there's going to be a bit of Haas that want Oliver Behrman in that car.
True.
Because if you think
6 hours ago, Haas have confirmed they will not appeal it. So
Right,
he
right.
is
Well,
banned.
yeah, if they're not appealing, I think that kind of says it all. If you go back to, was it 90? Is it 91 with Jordan, when their driver was arrested, and
Yeah.
they were more than willing to keep Schumacher in that car. No, don't. I mean, Eddie Jordan was the driver's manager.
Yeah,
and
go ahead. It's just
go ahead. You stay in jail, and we'll keep.
What's that? He was drink driving. I'm sure he run someone over as well.
We'll keep Michael
Yeah.
Schumacher. And it was, there are points where teams are selfish to the point where they will
Go
want
above
to have
and beyond
in that
to
car.
to get that driver to test for them and test that driver's muscle. There's a golden opportunity for Haas to get Behrman in now.
Does a good job. He might even end up in that car for the rest of the year. Bearing in mind they're not appealing that, and a lot of the media have said it's a disputable penalty, and Haas have gone, nah, not going to bother. Put Oliver Behrman in, and if he does a really good job, mate, then it might be a case of just leaving Oliver Behrman in for the rest of the season. I mean, they've got nothing to lose by doing that. It gives him a chance to get accustomed to the team, and he's not really competing in F2.
Yeah, true.
So I can see that happening, and I don't think anyone's talking about it. I really can.
Kevin Magnussen looked absolutely devastated in the media pen. But I can't help but think this is just a consequence of his own actions. 12 penalty points over 12 months. Some of them may be unfair, but others, he's a driver that's known for driving on the very limit of the rules of racing.
Yeah, he is.
And it's a tough one,
isn't it? Doesn't it? It depends which way you look at it, because you could argue where he got the most points was Miami. He did his absolute damnedest to make sure the Hulkenberg stayed in the sprint race.
Yeah.
And stayed in the points. And the moves that he made were doing that to keep Hamilton behind for as long as possible to make sure Hulkenberg got his result. And he did that for the benefit of the team and sacrificed himself. So you could argue that he could be repaid by just leaving him in for the rest of the season. I get it. But he has also, it is his own fault. What he's done is he's always stepped the line too many times. I mean, as soon as you're on 10 points, I'm surprised he's managed to make it, in total honesty, to Monza without getting two more. So
yeah. His points are now cleared once he's served his race ban. He's back down to 0.
That's all right then.
But yeah, it's just a strange one. I agree with you. It will be very good for Haas to put, now that Magnussen is out for the end of the season, he's not got a drive. It'd be good for Haas to put Ollie Behrman in and test him for the end of the season. It depends on, though, whether or not Haas want to. I mean, they're currently 7th in the championship and 6 points behind RB. And it looks likely that they'll overtake them if they keep getting results. RB seem to be nowhere at the moment. That car has fallen back. At the beginning of the season, that RB was... It looks quite competitive, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It's fallen off. I mean, I don't know what they're going to... I don't know. For me, if I'm Komatsu, I'm putting Behrman into the end of the year. I like Magnussen, but I just leave him in. I think it's back to when they got rid of Brendan Hartley at the Toro Rosso team, and they had a chance, and they just thought, okay, going to do this, leave it as it is. I would do that and just bring Behrman in. Bearing in mind, he probably, out of him and Ocon in 25, he'll need be the one that needs to take the step to get into challenging in that car. It would be useful for him, and I'd see it as an opportunity and just do it.
It's not often that you see drivers changing mid-season, but this season is the fact that there's the potential for 2 is very strange as of recent years. But yeah, speaking of changing teams, we'll go to RB, Daniel Ricciardo first, after his ridiculous move on Nico Hulkenberg. But he started 12th and finished 13th and didn't really make an impression on the race. He beat his teammate, which more that can be said of Perez. So maybe in Red Bull's world, that's
oh dear,
that's more than enough. But I don't know. Like,
imagine going to Ricciardo now and going, "Yeah, you want the Red Bull seat? Have it." Now that we're nowhere near competing at the minute, you jump in, mate. No problem. You'd be absolutely seething, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. It looks likely Liam Lawson, from what we're hearing, is going to jump in a seat somewhere. So,
which seat?
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Exactly. Which seat is he going to jump in? The Red Bull? At this point, you'd probably put your money on putting Liam Lawson in that Red Bull.
Of course you would.
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
I'd have Liam Lawson in the Red Bull over Ricciardo and Tsunoda and Perez.
At one point, I feel like just 2 weeks ago, I was saying Ricciardo over Lawson. But at this point, Lawson needs a drive. Red Bull need a driver that's able to score consistently. And why would you... in my head now, I'm just thinking, like, why would you change one veteran driver for... You know, Ricciardo is now becoming a veteran driver. Why would you change one for another and maybe get the same results?
I need a young, refreshed team. Verstappen and Lawson is a team. Is a combination which is in my head is going to be more competitive in years to come than Verstappen and Tsunoda, Ricciardo or Perez.
Why do we think Tsunoda has never been in the conversation? I feel like just touching on that for a second. I feel like Tsunoda, when he did get his good results, was never really looked at, and even between most pundits and presenters and media people in Formula One in that space, it's never seemed like a possibility that Tsunoda would ever go into that. He's always seemed like a junior driver, even though at this point he's not a junior anymore. He's very much ingratiated in the RB and looks like he's staying there forever now. Until
to me, his good performances have always been good, but the great standout performances haven't been standout performances. Like look at Ricciardo, where he goes and gets fourth in a sprint race or qualifies fourth in Mexico, and is competitive that entire time throughout until eventually certain circumstances happen. The flashpoints for Ricciardo to be into that conversation have been good and really good. Ones for Tsunoda have just been he's had a good few drives. He's outperforming his teammate over a year, and he's good here. There's nothing great. There's nothing standout. That's not a Red Bull driver.
His highs are not high enough.
Yeah, his highs aren't high enough, and he's just mediocre. And it's not. He's a Formula One capable driver. Don't get me wrong. I believe that. I just think that he isn't Red Bull. He isn't Red Bull driver material. I think Liam Lawson could be. I think the fact that he's turned around out in the media and gone, well, I should be in a seat. He has the confidence in himself to go, I should be there. There's something about Liam Lawson which you can look at and go, fair enough. Ricciardo, the same thing. You can go, well, he's already been in the top team. He's won races, multiple races. He had a bad few years, but he also did very well in a Renault. There are different ways you can look at the situation and go, okay, Ricciardo is an argument. Tsunoda, for me, isn't in that conversation. Maybe I'm missing something.
Ricciardo's McLaren years didn't do his career any good. That's for sure. And the perception of him. He did win in a McLaren, but that was very much a standout on-off performance in terms of like his overall stint there. And yeah, I just think, as you say, Tsunoda's highs aren't high enough. Ricciardo is, at this point, too much of a gamble. You know, he's as much of a gamble as Liam Lawson is as a new Formula One driver, which says a lot, because Daniel Ricciardo is a Grand Prix winner, I think 8 times.
8 times.
8 times Grand Prix winner. Why wouldn't you? You know, on paper, get him in. Like, why we even got Perez?
Yeah, God knows, mate. I'd put Lawson in.
Yeah,
and just have it done for next year.
Yeah, just have it done. Rip the Band-Aid off and
see how it does. Don't they? I mean, look, they're in a mess. So Liam Lawson coming in, he's not going to be expecting, if the team's in a mess, he'd be happy to be in a Red Bull.
Yeah, he'd be happy to be in a Formula One seat.
Exactly. He's not exactly. Get him in.
I mean, Tsunoda, like the only thing that we can really say on it is inconsequential race. He had a side pod damage from that collision with Hulkenberg into turn 1. You know, you had to remind me about, but I do remember it now. But yeah, just tired from the race. He couldn't really do anything. Started 16th, so got out qualified by his teammate anyway. Suggested during interviews that he has a worse car than Daniel Ricciardo, though.
He suggested he had different parts.
Which
it didn't.
It was though
either way.
No, but he said it in regards to his qualifying performance. So surely, if you say that you've got different parts, then you're not saying it for no reason, are you? In an interview about qualifying, about your results, you're not saying, "Well, I've got different parts to my teammate." Why would you
Could have
say
been
that?
saying he's a test dummy, though. He could have been saying he's been the test dummy. The parts that are new that are on his car haven't worked. Probably not. I'm just being devil's advocate. We
Even
both
being
aren't
devil's
stupid.
advocate, what you're saying still lends to the fact that he's saying that
Yeah.
those parts have caused my qualifying deficit.
Yeah, he's clutching, isn't he? Though, let's be honest, he's clutching, and he's got a seat for next year. I don't really get.
He's got a seat for next
Why?
year in RB. He wants a seat in Red Bull.
Yeah,
It's not been considered for it. It's nothing to say, really, is there?
not really.
It's a shame because, as you say, like he is F1 worthy. He's just not.
He's not top, is he?
He's not top. I can't see Yuki Tsunoda lifting F1 Drivers' Championship one day.
No, I can't. that's a certainty.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm sitting in a chair and
we are armchair experts. Let's just point that
exactly,
out. We're not exactly
Experts
is a very loose term as well.
Speak for yourself, mate. You know what I mean? I'm a genius. You know, think back to my Monza predictions.
For reference, he predicted that McLaren would win the 2021 race and then proceeded to win the 2021 race. So yeah, Alpine
for that.
Yeah, you've got the receipts.
Alpine.
I
mean, oh god.
Alpine. We're now down to Alpine.
Alpine. Am I right thinking that Ocon? Did Gasly have a problem? I think Gasly had a problem. And this
slight problem.
Slight problem. Do we know what the issue was? Because it could have been caused after all that going across that chicane. So maybe I'm talking triple. But he definitely was slipping back and he got overtaken by Ocon, didn't he, at some point? Yeah. And Ocon started far back.
Ocon started 15th and finished 14th. Gasly started 14th, finished 15th.
So literally just swap position.
They just swap position. And that team is very much down
really
there.
Where they are.
Yeah, that's where they are at the moment. They've had, I think, was it in Netherlands where people were saying that team is impressive that it's come forward so far, or was it the?
It was there. It was
Netherlands where they were saying that it's impressive.
Not come anywhere.
It's maybe it's a consequence of the track, but when that car was revealed, and the nose compared to every other car, the entire front of the car looked different to the rest of the field. And sometimes you think like that's a good idea, but it just didn't look like one. And I don't know, that car is just it was doomed from the start. And it's going nowhere.
It's doomed every year from the start. Every time they turn up and you unveil it. I've watched the past couple, like 3 years worth of Alpine unveilings with either you or with Paddy, for example. And we say the same thing. It's like they've got a massive air intake every time. We know the engine's still knackered, so they can't do anything with the engine. And we know full well the way it's going, the team won't be around. So every time they come in and there's a special pink livery they show off.
Did you hear Nico Rosberg drop that he was?
What did he say?
So during FP3 or FP2, he's just like, oh yeah, I've got an email from, just casually, oh yeah, I've got an email from Alpine offering me to buy a part of the team. I've ignored it. And Karun Chandok was like, you can't just drop that during FP2 or FP3. And he's like, well, he said, are you going to buy it? He's like, no. Why would I?
Why would I?
Why would I buy it? Why would I put my stake in that team? The team that as we reflected on last week is dropping their entire engine division. As an engine manufacturer, the team is called Alpine, but at the end of the day, it is Renault. It's got a Renault engine in it, and that division is now being striking because of it. He strikes at Monza because of it, and yeah, it's just.
Oh mate, honestly, I feel like there's going to be a lot of Alpine fans that if they see this, will be hating on it. We don't hate Alpine.
No, we don't hate Alpine.
I'd love to see the Renault work team doing brilliantly, right? I really would. It'd be great for the sport. The engine manufacturer being decent in the sport, brilliant. The issue is, very simply put, is that they keep just putting plasters over what's going on.
Yeah,
we'll get a new guy in. What is it, Oliver Oakes or something?
Oliver Oakes, yeah.
It's like, oh, he's good. He's been brilliant for them. Okay,
The staff
brilliant.
turnover though is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and it needs to stop. It needs to sort the stuff out, and it's beyond at this point. I think it's beyond a joke. I'll be totally frank. Whoever hired Gasly alongside Ocon and thought that was not going to be a problem as well. There's nothing healthy about the team dynamic up and down. There's nothing about it which is signified any sort of level-headed thinking. The only time it's actually been level-headed is the fact they've turned around and gone, okay, well, our engine is that bad. We need to go and get ourselves a customer engine.
And that didn't even come from Alpine, though, did it? It came from the...
Exactly, came from the advisor.
Came from an advisor. Which, for itself, speaks into the state of the team at the moment. And as you say, though, like, we want the team to be there. Like, as I said to you in the past, like, my overall F1 dream is for multiple engine manufacturers to be in the sport fight. You know, your McLarens can stay because it's not an engine manufacturer, but you know, your mainstay teams. I would absolutely love the mainstay teams to be there. But the dream for Formula One is to have engine manufacturers on the grid, things that you see, supercars that you see, or cars that you see on the road every day in the pinnacle of motorsport. Obviously not the road cars, but what they've made for Formula One cars.
Yeah, I've got you. We're on the same way.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because that may have been misconstrued as I want to see Fiat Pandas driving around the track, and I don't.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Might be faster than the Alpine.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah. But you know, you want to see that is exactly what you want to see. You want to see engine manufacturers, people coming together and competing week in, week out, and not knowing who's going to be the winner. And that's exactly what that team has proven in the past. Maybe obviously different stuff, but that base of operations has proven in the past that they can build a race-winning car.
Yeah,
2005, 2006, but
my thing with it is that it's two different teams, isn't it? So you've got the one at Enstone, and you've got the one in France that builds the engines. Now, the thing with this is that the whole point of being a works team is that you work in close collaboration with your works team, with your engine manufacturer, to build your car around the engine, to be able to basically make it as beautiful as a fit as it can be. So it's a beautifully working car that works systematically with ease and perfection.
Yeah.
And the fact is that being so far away and so distant with it, I mean, even Red Bull and Honda, they had to bring people over to Red Bull to make it work, to be able to build systems together. There's nothing about the team at the minute which is working systematically. It's all wrong. I can't imagine it's at this point. I actually would just say it's not fixable. Sell the team, have your Renault power if they still want to supply the engines, whatever you want to do, but sell the team. Let Andretti.
So you think they're going the wrong way? You think that by sacking off the engine division to try and be competitive in Formula One, you think that they're being the wrong way? You should sack off the team and keep the engine division.
Yeah, at this point, if you're gonna
cut off something,
your engines before the regs in 2014 were the best engines.
Yeah.
They won 4 world championships. I mean, they're still competitive enough to win 4 world championships in a row with the Red Bull. They've been competitive the 90s, competitive the entire time. The thing is now is that if they can get it right at 26, fair enough. But if that should be your main focus, is the engines, you've always built good engines, and now you're going to sack off the wrong part. I mean, you make money from engines as well. If you've got a good enough engine where customers want to come to you and use your engine, there's an income there. They have no income anymore. There's no income from Red Bull. It hasn't been for some time. They've spent so much money and it's all gone to pot. The Alpine, every decision they've made has been wrong. I don't think that's unfair to say. From the driver hiring, from bringing in the constant new team principals, the fact that they've not managed to sort it out over the past, literally, what was their plan? 5-year plan? It's been how long now? Like 8 years, 9 seasons, something like that. And it's all gone wrong. And I think at this point, you either cut it all off or just leave the engines.
The drivers are both very good drivers, but they just don't gel.
Yeah, 100%. They just don't gel. It's not a team. It's not me saying, oh, okay, Gasly and Ocon are 2 useless drivers. The case, well, they don't like each other.
They don't like each other. They can't work together, and the only reason why they're together is because they're both 2 French drivers.
you can do as much Sky interviews together as you like of, oh, we've moved on and this, and we're actually quite matey and pal. You know, you're not. You don't like each other. You don't want to be there. Get out. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Ocon, from his personality and how he carries himself, is definitely the instigator in that. Between any relationship that he's had with any driver in Formula One, it always seems that Ocon is the instigator. As good as of a driver he is, as displayed that he is, he also makes some terrible decisions on the track sometimes, and yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. But I just wanted to touch on that the drivers aren't terrible; they don't go together, and like you say, it's. I agree with you.
Totally
Every
team, innit?
decision has been diabolical. Like, why would you do that? Everyone questions, like, why would you do that? The only smart thing that they've done is bring in Flavio Briatore to tell them that engine is not going to be good in 2026.
How
Sack it
bad
off.
must it have been? How bad must that engine have been for 26?
I've no idea.
Nah, it must be
Yeah, like,
flatline awful.
but what are they comparing it to, though?
Teams talk.
They must
Teams
do.
talk. What from?
But
the
how does
limited amount
Flavio
I've had of-
Briatore know this? And
Flavio
Renault-
Briatore knows everyone's side of the sport, though.
Yeah, just what I'm saying is that if teams talk,
I got you.
how does Flavio Briatore know this? Going in as an advisor, he has to be hired as an advisor, then go and advise them. So the entire time that Flavio Briatore hasn't been around, teams talk still. Let's just forget about Flavio for a second. That entire time, nothing.
Isn't he
They've
still,
not
is he
thought
still
to themselves.
manager of? Is he still the manager of Alonso as well? I think he is. I think he
is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
He'll be in the know in some regards to some things, but as you said, the teams talk. People who've moved teams, still friends with their old teams. But things slip. Everyone knows. It's not confidential information, but everyone has a rough idea of where teams are at, what upgrades are being brought, how the engines are looking. I mean, do you remember when they turned around? What was it? 2018, 2019? They said they had 1,000 horsepower or something.
Yeah, that was Cyril
Hungary.
Beetle. I forgot his name.
Cyril a bit. Well, it's like you what? Even Mercedes, who had the best powertrain at the time, didn't know how much horsepower they had. And they didn't have the exact figure, but how Renault, who had the worst engine, had 1,000 horsepower. These statements
Where
like
does that
just
come
make
from?
you look like a joke. Exactly. It just makes you look like a joke, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They're not a respectable team anymore.
Which is a shame. It's just a shame.
Yeah, it is.
From where it came from, where it got to, and then the downfall and the fact that they kept on selling and buying the team, and it's
Yeah.
that stint as Lotus where it was powered as Renault. It's just.
I mean, the only other team that's doing as dodgy a job this season is Sauber, and I think that's
Sauber.
Segue onto that.
Well, we can segue onto Sauber.
Yeah.
Sauber. Bottas started 19th, finished 16th. Joe started 20th, finished 18th. That team very much feels like it is just, let's just save our money and wait for Audi to come in.
Treading water, isn't it? I mean, it's good to see Bonotto in the garage.
Yeah, that was quite
Raikkonen in the garage.
Yeah.
It's probably the highlight of the season, isn't it, really, for them, seeing Raikkonen in the garage? I mean, at this point, I have no idea how they're going to pull their act together. It seems that they've got a decent team starting to form, personnel coming in. It's going to take a lot of time to be able to get it going in the perfect direction for them.
But they're not based out of England still, which a lot of people have criticised. With Audi, when they come in, they're still not going to be based out of England.
It's hard to get people. It's hard to get the pool of people you want to come in to your team.
Yeah.
And do that. I mean, it's something that's been thrown at Ferrari, hasn't it? I mean, they're never going to change, they're never going to move, but it's something that's been said about bringing people over from England to move into Italy, into Maranello. That was a thing which was an issue.
And what Ferrari has going for it, just to touch on that, what Ferrari has going for it, which Audi don't, is that Ferrari is Ferrari. There's people romanticize Ferrari in Formula One. They're not going to be doing that about Audi. So what are they doing?
I think the only thing that Audi can try and do to convince people is the fact Audi have won it every category they've done. And I think that's the only thing which has probably brought Bonotto in, Jonathan Wheatley. I think it's the real reason as to why people are starting to, okay, we'll give this a go. Let's see if we can make this work. It's a good opportunity for their careers as well to be in as main figures in the team. Can it be competitive for 26? It's a new reg change. Anything could happen. At this point, I'd sack off 25. I'd be like, I don't even know what I can do with that car for that year. Sack it off. Can we do something with 26 and make the car competitive and try that? I mean,
they've got to make a somewhat competitive car for next year, though, because not competitive in terms of, but they've got to stay with the pack. Because I think if they don't qualify, then they have to within a certain percentage.
125%. They're not going to be that far away. 125%.
You never know. Because
I mean, come on. I mean, even the Williams
of
like 2018, 19
that bad. It's looking that bad. It's looking pretty bad at the moment. It's looking pretty bad. I mean,
125% is a lot. It's a lot, mate.
I agree. It was more a joke, but
I know, but
yeah, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not that bad, but I spend a little bit of money. Yeah. They can't come out with a cardboard box and
Red Bull soapbox race and just
exactly.
Put Valerie Bottas in it, like plunk. There you go, mate.
Yeah.
Sound. You wouldn't be able to change a tire.
There's one.
Bless him.
Yeah.
There you are.
Right, so yeah, Bottas 19th, finished 16th. Zhou magically finished ahead of Lance Stroll in a much slower car, so I feel like he can take pride in that 18th place.
Yeah,
but they're nowhere, and they're not going to be anywhere. The team is still on 0 points championship, and as of today, Franco Colapinto got past Valtteri Bottas in the driver's standings.
Yeah, shows exactly where they are. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's been. There's not really too much to say about them. I don't want to get too critical on them. They're obviously in a place of transition.
Yeah,
they've had their issues with the wheels and stuff.
Yeah,
everyone's kind of said there's a difference between the cars as well. I don't really know how much truth is in that, but it is what it is. And I think
I don't know if it's still true. It was definitely true a couple of races ago.
Yeah. So
but now it's not. Now it probably isn't, because we've had 2 races and them upgrades that went on to Bottas's car, if we can call them upgrades at this point. They must be on Zhou's car, unless they were like, these upgrades have got us nowhere. Let's not bother putting them on. Like, why are we spending our money? I don't know. I don't know what the thinking is behind that team. At the beginning of the season, that team couldn't complete a pit stop.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, mate. It's it is what it is. Yeah. Not really too much to say about it, is there?
No. It's just a matter of circumstance at the moment, and both drivers aren't looking good for it. Basically, they're just not. There's nothing that the drivers can do about it. It's very much the car. Right. That rounds out everybody. We've well gone over the hour. We've gone over an hour and a half, I'd say, with what we've talked about. It's gone on for 2 hours. Don't know who's going to be listening all the way to the end of this one, but anything that you want to touch on before? I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to end it here. Do you want to touch on anything else before we round out? Do you want to have what was your highlight of the race?
Highlight of the race? I'll be honest.
Now that we've got to the end of all that,
I was going to say the highlight of the race. I don't really know. It was. I think
it was quite inconsequential, wasn't it? The race didn't happen. Like the magic happened in the pit stops.
The main takeaway is McLaren have absolutely bottled a chance to make an impact.
Yeah,
they bottled a chance to go away from this race leading the championship. They did. They could have gone ahead from this race leading the Constructors' Championship. They've not. That's a big point. Again, Leclerc did a great job. That's another great point we have to mention. Leclerc, he did brilliantly. He did, and fair play to him. I just want to say, to be totally frank, what's more impressive to me is what happened in F2 with Bortoletto.
Oh yeah,
that man started, and I know it's not a name that gets thrown around too much. He's second in the championship at the minute in the Formula 2. He started 22nd and still managed to win that race. Admittedly, there was a safety car, but the safety car only put him back to 6th. He then managed to fight his way through and win that race. That is a brilliant drive. And again, it goes to show the state of Formula 1 at the minute. We don't even know who's going to come out of that and go into a seat.
Yeah.
Drives like that get highlighted and they do brilliantly. He's a McLaren development driver. And I mean, he's not going to get into a McLaren anytime soon. it might be again a circumstance of he might not even get a seat at the end of it. Though it's not even leaving the championship. And there's drivers like Behrman, who's not even in the top 10, and there's drivers like Antonelli, who's sick, who are not getting in there, who are getting into the sport, and the people who are at the top just aren't.
Touch on Kimi Antonelli as well. He's going into a top team, which is
straight
into a top team. I mean, the last time that happened was, we say Lewis Hamilton?
It would be Lewis Hamilton straight into a top team, not after like a year or anything like that. It would be Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Lewis
Hamilton jumped straight into a race-winning capable car straight away.
Yeah.
We
can't say that yet because Mercedes aren't. We're not in the next season yet.
Yeah, but they'll be competing for podiums. I think that's more fair. He's more likely than not going to have a chance to compete for a podium.
And it is a top team, so you can say it's a top team. It's not exactly like it's not a Williams or a Haas or a he's not joining Sauber. So this will be the first time that's happened since Lewis Hamilton joined in 2007. Very interesting in the fact that, like you say, he's sixth and Bortoleto is second in the championship, doing races
within
like
10
that.
Points.
Within 10 points. It's the state of the sport at the moment. It's a shame that there aren't more teams. I wouldn't want too many more teams, but the talent the talent that's getting missed is criminal.
Yeah, it really is. Look at Drugovic.
Yeah,
Drugovic, he won the championship. He's not getting a shout. There's so many good drivers that don't get a shout. I think actually I did see a rumor, but not always considering Théo Pourchaire for that Sauber seat for next year. The poor guy. It's still a seat in F1, so hey ho.
Oh, it's we call it F1.
They're considering him for that. I mean, that's fair enough, but people aren't getting an opportunity when they deserve to have an opportunity, and that's a big problem. I'm not really sure it would be addressed either. There's nothing they can really do. There's not like a mandatory thing where you have to lose someone or anything like that.
Yeah, there's not.
And there's nothing they can put in that respect. And I think the only way it will actually be more beneficial is if another team joins and not just buys out a team. I think that the market for that in a minute would be so incredibly steep. That's not going to happen. Yeah. You'd have to have a buyout of a team for that to happen. So it's unfortunate, but it's the current state of Formula One.
There's a couple of drivers that you could argue that don't deserve to be there, but have overstayed their welcome for the competitiveness that they've showed. So It's not that they didn't deserve to be there when they got there. It's just that at this point, some of them are like getting into the point like, how have you kept your seat when these young drivers have come along? And at one point we were thinking that, when Charles Leclerc came into the sport, George Russell, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, a lot of young drivers came in around the same time. Those four, especially, obviously Verstappen, a bit
Albon
earlier.
as well.
And Albon as well, yeah. And we were thinking, okay, now is F1 becoming a younger driver's sport? But it is very much ebbed and flowed back towards the other direction now. It's going back towards, we're going to get drivers in their mid-30s again. And then there'll be one young one on the grid. And then maybe it'll go back to when these drivers get to 40, it's going to be 4 or 5 young drivers. It's interesting, isn't it? But at the moment, the young drivers that deserve a chance, especially like your Bortoleto and your Théo Pourchaire and Drugovic, it's a shame. It's just a shame. Like we need more teams on the grid, one or two more, and I think F1 could be in a good state. But then when you say one, I think there should always be a spot. There should always be at least an opportunity for the F2 champion go up into F1, and I don't know how that happens.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens. I don't know if there needs to be a Formula One run team.
I think the best way for that to happen is the fact that F2, what is it, the F2 for the young drivers test of doing, I think, where everyone's in the same car and doing a race at the end of the year in that. So I don't know if that would make any sense. I don't really. It's just one track, so I don't know if that was something they were muting or I don't know.
Yeah.
there should be.
What would be very cruel is doing like a race between like the bottom 5 teams and like having the teams choosing a driver and then putting them up against an F2 rookie.
Oh, bless.
And then if they didn't win, they'd lose the seat. That'd be very cruel and probably it's highly unrealistic, but it'd be a good way to do it.
It would sort the problem.
Sort the problem straight away. Bye, Guan Yu Zhou.
Yeah. Poor fella. At least he got to do China before.
Yeah.
Before the end of his career, so fair play to him.
Yeah. Okay then. I think we've obviously covered everything. We better have covered everything. It's been 2 hours. Yeah. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody who watched, who listened, and we'll see you again next time when we get to Baku after the race next time out, 2 weeks from now, on the 15th. Could be wrong.
Yes.
Either way, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye for now.
Cheerio.
All right, we're done.